Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder here, hijacking the Star Wars Explained YouTube channel to viciously shove my nostalgia-fueled love of Star Wars legends into all of your faces. If you're missing Alex today and want to see something a bit more sensible, I guess, check out his video on my channel, where he covers the relationship between Wookiees and Trandoshans. Over here, we'll be talking about Marvel Star Wars. So, the Marvel Star Wars comic series was one of the first entries of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. It spanned 107 issues over 9 years, and the original comic run covered not only the 3 original trilogy movies, but also a variety of fun news stories, including an arc which saw the post-Endor Rebel Alliance face off against an alien threat from outside the galaxy. This final arc, the Nagai Toph War, is well known for its somewhat limited scope and the way the conflict comes out of nowhere. After Return of the Jedi, Lucasfilm mandated that when Marvel was making new comics, major characters were not to change in any significant way. For example, Luke and Leia were not to discuss the fact that they were siblings, the relationship between Han and Leia was not to progress any further, and the Empire, Jedi, etc. were not to be featured at all. This was of course to maintain the freedom to make new movies in the time period in the future should they choose to do so. Thus, the Star Heroes fight a previously unknown enemy, and by the final pages of 107, the galaxy essentially had not changed since the Ewok party on Endor. Given the fact that most of the early EU content, including the Marvel comics and the newspaper strips, as well as the Han Solo and Lando trilogies, would later be relegated to essentially a second tier of canon anyway, before of course a total EU wipe, I think you could say that Lucasfilm was maybe a little too cautious when it came to curtailing Marvel's foraging of new storylines. This is especially true given their only real other option for a story at this point was a proposed new line of Kenner toys dubbed the Epic Continues, which would have featured among other things a double-decker Star Destroyer. Regardless, despite the fact that Marvel had been revitalized by Star Wars, which sold consistently well, they stopped publishing the main run and later the Droid and Ewok comics in the 80s. Some of this was apparently due to the fact that Lucasfilm was so heavy-handed, and of course the comic industry was returning from some economic difficulties, and superheroes were still popular. In the 90s, the Star Wars Expanded Universe was revitalized with not only the Thrawn trilogy, but Dark Empire, the trilogy of Star Wars comics created by Dark Horse, who had picked up the comic license and continued to hold it until Disney purchased Star Wars and returned it to Marvel in 2015. Unlike with the Marvel comics, Dark Horse was allowed to create new post-Endor storylines, and Dark Empire 1, 2, and Empire's End did so with a degree of controversy. That brings us now to 2019. As I said, Marvel is again making Star Wars comics, but we've also got the launch of something that I personally never expected to see, the continuation of the original Marvel comic line with Star Wars 108. And you know what? It's really, really good. 108 picks up chronologically after 107 with the Alliance of Free Planets, which was the name Marvel basically gave for their New Republic-like faction, being transformed into the New Republic itself. It sees the return of characters like Jackson and Amazia Foxtrain, while focusing on the apparent rebirth of Valence the Hunter, who was thought killed in issue 29. It also picks up plot points from Star Wars 50, The Crimson Forever, but I don't want to go too far into the plot because I think it's important that you read and enjoy it yourself. 108 is, in my opinion, a phenomenal comic. It's interesting in that it manages to maintain the original tone and style of the Marvel Star Wars comics, in other words, a sort of pulpy or serialized fun adventure, while integrating it into later Legends lore, something which was of course impossible due to how time works with the original run. We see references to Vornskurs, a cheeky little nod, at least I think, to Alana Solo, a character who may or may not be Mara Jade, and of course the presence of the New Republic. But we also get to see, probably for the last time, a bunch of the comic-only characters. Not only Jackson, who gets all the spotlight, but even references to Danny or the Nagai and the Toph. I think Marvel's Star Wars 108 is important because it recognizes that the Star Wars expanded universe, and thus to a degree the popularity of Star Wars generally, was built on the back of giants. Everyone knows the Thrawn trilogy, very few people know the Marvel comics. 108 was a nice recognition of that, and perhaps a little bit of sorry for the way that Lucasfilm treated Marvel back in the 80s. 108 is also officially within the Legends continuity, and besides for the Old Republic, basically the only new Legends content we've gotten since the decanonization. So, if you're a fan of Star Wars Legends like I am, I highly suggest you check it out. Anyway guys, that is all for today. I hope you enjoyed my take on the issue, and if you did, you can find my channel over at youtube.com/EckhartsLadder. While you're there, make sure to check out Alex's video on the unpleasant relationship between Trandoshans and Wookiees. Anyway, until next time guys, this has been Eckhart's Ladder for Star Wars Explained. As always, have a great day, and may the Force be with you.